If you're watching this, it must mean one thing. Christmas is on the way. But then technically from December the 26th, it always is. But either way, if you're watching this before mid-November, I would like to apologise profusely to any Scrooges for the early festive cheer. But I thought I'd get in early this year and take a look at the new Govee holiday lighting, which I gave you a preview of in this year's IFA Berlin episode. So in today's episode, I'll take a look at these new Govee lights, starting with the net lights, which are an easy way to turn your hedge into a light show, the new Icicle style lights for a frosty festive edition, and lastly the new and updated string lights, which feature a brand new shape mapping system. So let's dive straight in with the new net lights, which I think are perhaps Govee's most genius update this year. Now, to set them up, you basically pretend that you're one of those gladiators that we all think are the absolute worst. You know, the ones with the net and oversized fork from your grandma's kitchen drawer. But you take this net and launch it over your hedge, and that's it. Job done.
Not sure that worked as much as I thought it was going to.
Now, I found that if you get it right, you might not even need to secure it, especially if you get it hooked onto some branches. But to be on the safe side, Govee have included a bunch of normal zip ties and pegs to allow you to fasten it to the hedge to make sure that it doesn't get blown off in the bad weather. Now, I'll admit that my hedge is so overgrown at the moment that I wasn't really able to install it perfectly straight. To be honest, I wasn't even able to put it on semi-straight either. My 3-year-old might have done a better job of it, but hopefully you'll get the gist anyway. Now, once set up, these act and perform an almost identical function as the Govee curtain lights, which features as part of last year's Christmas display. Each of the 240 LEDs are individually customizable, so you can go into the app and change the colours and animations, along with being able to draw and create your own images, such as a thumbs up button, which surely deserves you clicking the thumbs up button on this video. Right? Right. Now, obviously, that's just the surface of the smart functionality, and if you're watching this episode, you've potentially got a good understanding of the core functionality of the Govee smart system. But for those that aren't an initiate in Govee lighting, I'll touch on some of the overall smart connectivity towards the end, because much of it is the same across all of the new lighting. But the whole display is just shy of 3 meters long and essentially giving us nearly a 3 meter length panel at just under a meter height to play with and create some incredible imagery and a spectacular light show on what would have otherwise been a redundant area without hassle. And I think this is where the product excels at. It creates big impact for very little effort. Now, the RRP of the Govee net lights is £149, which is the same price as their curtain lights. And at this price, they're a little bit more expensive than some of the other lighting in the range. But then these are a much more niche product than some of the others, and a much more technical product, so it is understandable somewhat. But let's crack on and take a look at their new Icicle lights. These are perhaps the easiest of all the Govee lights to create a festive feel in your home, given that they're reminiscent in shape of their namesake, icicles. And when you put these up and turn them on, it immediately starts to feel like winter. Now, these things are fully RGB-IC, and each LED has its own chip to create a richer and brighter display. And because of this, just like the net lights, each bead is independently controllable for full customization, albeit you aren't going to be able to create detailed images like the net lights because the maximum length of a string is 7, and the minimum length is 3. Then again, on the Govee website, they do show an image where they've drawn numbers into segments. So you could at least draw a countdown to Christmas Day. How long is it till Christmas? But even if that's a little bit too festive for you Scrooges, it's still great to be able to control the colours at your own leisure. Now, the length of the Icicle lights is a whopping 10 metres, which should be more than enough for most people, although if it's not, you can buy a 20 metre option which has a power cable to feed two 10-meter sets into it from the same adapter. But after that, you'll need a separate set of either 10 or 20 meters if you need longer than that. One of the benefits of these is very much like the string lights. These are IP65, so you can use them indoors and outdoors, and for mounting them on your house, it would seem that Govee have moved away from the use of 3M sticky pads, which I'm rather thankful for, actually. Being Icicle Lights, there's a very, very good chance to be putting these up in the winter. And one thing I found from last year's Christmas display is don't try and stick 3M pads to things when it's below freezing temperature. It just doesn't work.
I've got a problem. It's not too bad for the majority of them. Most of them seem to be sticking up all right. But there's a couple that really aren't.
And if anyone wants to see last year's smart lighting Christmas display, I will drop a link in the description below. But as mentioned, this year there's no 3M. Instead, Govee have opted to supply you with a zip tie, like the net lighting, but more interestingly, with the Icicle Lights, they've added these little clips which are genius.
Now these little tools are extremely clever that they've come up with, because they don't just act as some kind of hook. First of all, you've got two hooks on both ends. One end is to hook onto whatever you want to hook it on, and the second end is obviously to hold the lights. But they've also got this kind of tooth grip here, which means that essentially you can push it under the shingles of a house like this and then hook your lights onto it like that. But also, it's a hook so that you can hook it onto guttering like this. I love this departure away from regular 3M sticky tape or screw fittings. This is a genius idea, and I know it's something so simple, but it makes me really happy that they've moved away from more damaging installations to a much less invasive way of mounting them. I think that's really cool. So for this, I'm going to be mounting it on here to the guttering.
And as a side note, we've had some of the worst weather in recent times here in Wales, with storms and flooding abound. And the clips have been absolute troopers and held on for dear life. Not one has come off. And by bad weather, to clarify, I'm talking so bad that the other week, one of the roads in the area turned into a river and I ended up drowning my car and was stranded overnight with only half a bottle of water and a breakfast bar and a baby's blanket for a bed on the back seat. Bad news is going to cost me an absolute fortune. Good news is it might be an argument to get a Tesla. So big thumbs up anyway here on their ability to withstand this kind of weather, both clips and lights alike. Now the cost of these new Icicle Lights are a bit more expensive than I anticipated at £139 RRP, but then again, as with the net lights, they're quite a niche product, and 10 meters of smart lighting, so it's not actually that bad in terms of cost, and that's RRP too. When I checked, it was on a bit of a discount. But I'll come back to that because now I want to discuss the final product, the new Christmas string lights 2. And I have to give Govee a gold sticker in advance for these, because these are one of those very rare releases where a company has decided to do exactly what its users wanted and updated with those desires. For starters, they now sell a version which is no longer a clear translucent rope. I always thought that that was slightly odd choice, with the first generation being a clear rope. It made the rope stand out during the day on the trees. It was more white than anything. But now you can buy the updated string lights 2 in both the original translucent colour and a new darker green colour, much like most Christmas lights are, and therefore they stand out a lot less during the day. But I think it is a good thing that Govee is still selling both, because if you're buying these just for Christmas, then the green is obviously most likely a better choice for you, but it unarguably hinders the flexibility of the lights, making them best suited for use on either indoor or outdoor greenery only. The translucent option is still great for being flexible in other projects. But still, this introduction of the new green option is exactly what was needed, and I know the colour of the string was perhaps one of the biggest criticisms of the first gen, But this isn't the biggest change they've made. Because even if you didn't want a colour change of the rope, there's one thing that we all wanted: shape mapping. Unlike the first generation, which essentially treated the lights only as a linear string, once set up, you can point your phone directly at these and map the positioning of the LEDs, which essentially lets you draw pictures on your display and create custom designs in any orientation, drawing on the pattern it creates within the app, rather than just the linear style the Gen 1 string lights are stuck with. This leads to some fantastic animation options that weren't available before, such as creating vertical lines whilst the lights are strung on horizontally. This is going to please a lot of people because it makes this device much, much smarter than it was before and gives us endless possibilities here. Now, there's actually two size variants of the string lights, a 20 metre and 30 metre version, which have an RRP of £99 and £129 respectively. Now, I've found that the 20 metre version should easily do a 7-foot tree and still have a really dense LED display. I have a 6-foot tree and I ended up with overstock of the 20 metre roll. And although here, as a footnote, I'm bloody terrible at Christmas tree decorating, either I start liberal and get 2/3 up before realising I've not got enough rope, or I start too conservatively and end up with 10 metres of rope dangling down the back. But going back to the point, a 20 metre roll is more than enough for one tree, and if you have anything bigger, the 30 metre will likely cover a 10-foot plus tree without sacrificing density. My only comment here, though, is that if you did have a tree bigger than that and needed to use 2 sets of these lights, you can't unfortunately pair the two up to work as a single shape map. So it would be nice to see a software addition to add that functionality for even bigger trees. But I genuinely think unless you have a giant outdoor tree, you'll only be using one set. It's just something to consider for those with dreams of creating a 20-foot smart Christmas tree. But altogether, the Net Lights, Icicle Lights and new string lights too are some excellent additions to the Govee festive lineup that will really make a big impact in your Christmas lighting this year. Now, outside of the specific functionality that I've mentioned for each one, they all pair up nicely to the Govee app, and as such will pair up through your smart home, through services such as Alexa, and as a sweetener, all of these new lights work through Matter. And once paired up, there's just so much control that you get with Govee Lights that it would take an entire series of videos to go through it all bit by bit. But individually, there are tons of preset scenes to choose from, some of which are static, some of which are animated, but all of which will change the colour of the lights to feature that particular theme. You can also pair up all of these lights into groups so that you can apply effects and colours across all of them at the same time, and you can even do things like sync them up to music, having them react to using the onboard microphones. And you've even got the ability to add things like pictures as inspiration for the colours, and there's even Govee's new AI, which will change lighting based on whatever you ask it. Now, this AI I've been a little bit critical of in the past. I haven't really found I've used it a great deal until now. In the past, I've only ever asked it to change its theme based on my mood or the activity. So, for example, asking it to turn on some relaxing lighting or change everything to party lighting, so on and so on. However, with the Net Lights, you can actually use the AI now to display images, and the AI will create a full LED sequence to display whatever you ask. Take a look at this.
Give me a YouTube logo.
Would you like me to apply the recommended scene? I have applied the recommended solution I created.
So now we're maybe 6 months on from Govee introducing this AI, and I would like to officially change my mind about it because this feature is bloody excellent with the Net Lights, and much better and quicker than me trying to draw the word subscribe on a tiny phone screen to display it on a poorly aligned net lighting.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. I run out of space.
But moving back to the point, There really is some cracking functionality with Govee lighting, and if you want to see them being used in other ways, then do check out all of my reviews of Govee's lighting at the playlist in the description, because we've covered quite a few bits over the past year, including some things to come, so go check that out. But to come to some kind of conclusion for today's episode, all of the new lights are a fantastic addition to the range for the festive season. But the thing is, I'm a firm believer that all of these lights have function beyond Christmas. The net lighting is ideal to create fun, twinkly atmosphere in the right place. And if you let your hedge grow into it a bit, like mine is a little bit, it could really make for quite a magical display all year round. The Christmas string lights too. I actually use a set of these first generation lights on my daughter's treehouse bed so that she can use them to create some fun atmosphere in her room. On the roof, I used some regular netting to hold the leaves on, but if I'd used the Govee netting, I could have even further increased its appearance with leaves seemingly twinkling too. The Icicle Lights, well, okay, like I said, those might be a little bit more festive than the other two, but I'm sure there's probably some niche year-round use they would suit. I just can't think of what that might be. If you have any ideas of how I could use these after Christmas, let me know in the comments below. But either way, there's one thing for sure, and that's that Govee lights aren't just for Christmas, they're for life. Now, I'll drop a link below to all of the new lighting, and as I mentioned earlier in the episode, it's worth checking out the links just in case they're offering discounts at the time you're watching this episode. But other than that, guys, if this episode has helped you in deciding if these new lights are worth adding to your festive light arrangement, do return the favour and hit that thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you back for another episode of STU'S Reviews soon.